Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Grand Traverse. I am Margaret Wozniak, a member of the Sunday Services Committee. Today's service theme is the sacred depths of nature. I enjoy a colorful sunset, a bluebird, nearly any flower in bloom, and native grasses. They give us a feast for the eye. I find beauty in rocks. The inside of the earth come up to greet us. These words from John Ruskin seem to be an appropriate way to lead into today's service. There is religion in everything around us, a calm and holy religion in the unbreathing things in nature. It is a meek and blessed influence, stealing in, as it were, unaware upon the heart. It comes quickly and without excitement. It is that which uplifts the spirit within us and which opens to our imagination a world of spiritual beauty and holiness. Are there any visitors with us here today who are coming for the first time? And if you are comfortable, would you be willing to rise and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Lori.
Well, welcome, Lori.
Hi, sorry, my name is Kara.
Kara, welcome to Kara.
I'm
Raquel. Thank you, Raquel. Katie. Thank you, Katie. Are there any others?
And
Lisa. Well,
This is my friend Paula. Paula is staying in Mary Van Balen's house for the summer.
Oh.
And she is my friend from Lansing, and I'm just thrilled to have her here with me for the summer.
welcome, one and all. Please join us in the social hall after the service so we can give you a more individual welcome. Know that you are welcome here with all the individuality and beauty of your own nature. Now we enjoy the vocal ensemble as it presents Great Trees.
Slowly, slowly they return to the small woodland left alone. Great trees outspreading and upright, apostles of the
Well, isn't that lovely to have the vocal ensemble singing with us again in our service? Whoever you are and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. I am the Reverend Alex Jensen. I use the pronouns he and him, and I serve here as the minister of this congregation of both open minds and fiercely loving hearts. As our first principle reminds us, we are welcomed here as we are, knowing that all people, no matter their backgrounds, their identities, their statuses, and their lived experiences, that all people are worthy of love just as they are. We welcome all people into our embrace who would join us in bringing more love and justice into our shared world. As we enter into this service in exploring nature and its sacredness, in this Soul Matters month of exploring what it means to nurture beauty, hear these opening words from the Reverend Dr. David Breeden. We join together bringing both our shadow and our light. We join together opening our minds and our hearts. We join together embracing, celebrating, sharing the beauty of each, the beauty of self, the beauty of the earth, and the beauty of all. As we enter into this time together, dear ones, let us think on the vast beauty of the earth and each of our sacred callings to nurture and preserve it. May nature's holy depths renew us and renew in us a spirit of commitment, beckoning us to see it with both reverence and respect. And so come, let us worship together this beautiful morning. So as we enter into this time together, we also acknowledge the land on which we live and gather, the land known to the Anishinaabeg, the indigenous folks native to this area, as the Kichiwi Kwedong, the place of the Big Bay. We recognize that there have been indigenous peoples who lived on these lands for generations before centuries of both violence and colonization, who are the Ojibwe and Odawa in our region. We raise the birch bark basket, holding the 4 sacred medicines of sweetgrass, cedar, sage, and tobacco, not for our own comfort or to make ourselves feel better about this past, but to remind us to hold and make space for the Anishinaabeg as we work to reconcile the harms of colonization. As Unitarian Universalists, it is also our practice each Sunday to light the Flaming Chalice, which is the symbol of our faith. And we are joining this morning with a chalice lighting all around the country and world of other congregations who are also kindling their flames this morning. Those of you that are tuning in via our YouTube live stream, we welcome you to kindle a candle or a flame at home as we light our chalice. And I will read our words as Margaret lights our chalice this morning. And these words come from Rachel Carson. Those who contemplate the beauty of the earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts. There is something infinitely healing in the repeated refrains of nature, the assurance that dawn comes after night and spring after winter. And so now we also sound the singing bowl as well, calling us into this sacred time together. I invite you to simply listen as the sound reverberates into silence and see if you can hear for when you can no longer hear it in this room. Oh, that's right. I forgot that I was the one ringing this morning. I invite you to now actually remain seated and to join in singing our opening hymn this morning in the teal hymnal for those of you that have your hymnals, number 1070, Mother, I Feel You. The lyrics are also in your order of service and will also be up on the screen here. And I now turn it over to Renee Russell, our music director, who will lead us in singing.
Good morning, everyone. So, thank you. This beautiful chant was written by Windsong Diane Martin back in 1954. And really, it was just a response to having been sitting outside and just listening to nature. So, listening to the wind through the trees, the birds as they're singing, just the sound of everything moving around, feeling the earth beneath her feet and all the life of the earth that was happening beneath her feet, tree roots, the mycelium, all the insects and other things that live below. So what I'm going to ask everybody, we're going to treat this as a chant. I think we've already got a song going. We're going to treat this as a chant, and I'm having everyone sit because I'm going to have us do a little bit of a heartbeat feel here. So on your chest, we're going to go just a nice solid. Boom. Just imagining the wind as it's moving through the trees. What it feels to sit with the ground beneath you. All the life that's moving around you. All right. And I'm going to sing the first verse one time through so we can hear what it sounds like. And then I'll call us in. It goes like this. Mother, I feel you under my feet. Mother, I hear your heartbeat. Hey, 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 oh. Hey, 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 oh. Hey, 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 oh. Hey, 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 oh. So we'll go back and we'll sing that first verse together. Here we go. 3, 4. Mother, I feel you under my feet. Mother, I hear your heartbeat. Hey, 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 oh. Hey, 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 oh. Hey, 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 oh. Hey, 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 oh. We're going to the second verse. Mother, I hear you in the river song, eternal water flowing on and on. Hey, 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 oh. Hey, 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 oh. Hey, 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 oh. Hey, 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 oh. Next verse. Father, I see you when the eagle flies. Light of the Spirit gonna take us higher. Hey, 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 oh. Hey, 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 oh. Hey, 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 oh. Hey, 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 oh. To the first verse one more time. Mother, I feel you under my feet. Mother, I hear your heartbeat. Hey, 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 oh. Hey, 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 oh. Hey, 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 oh. Hey, 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 oh.
Next month, at our annual meeting, we will vote on open seats for our Board of Trustees and for 2 committees. It is our practice to introduce the candidates to you beforehand. So today, if you are here, I would like these candidates to just come forward so that we can see your beautiful faces. Candidates for the Board of Trustees are Amanda Mangiardi and Dusty Colton. Judy Myers is also a candidate, but she cannot be here today. Others being voted on are members of the Leadership Development Committee, who are Jim Linzell, Charles Brackett, and Nan Worthington, and members of the Endowment Committee, Nancy Doughty and Don Pine. So if you are here, thank you for coming forward. We thank all of you for offering your time and your talent for the benefit of this beloved congregation. These candidates will be in the social hall after the service so that you may speak to them about any concerns you may have about their committees or the board or anything you may wish to relate to them. So thank you one and all for being candidates to serve our community. We regret that the names of the endowment candidates and the Leadership Development Committee were inadvertently left out of the order of service. There's a board in the entryway with bios of the candidates, so you can look at that after the service if you wish. Now we can move into our offertory. The words from the hymn, "Return Again," seem appropriate for today's service. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you were born and reborn again. Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. By making an offering, we can return again to the place where we are born and reborn again, this beloved community. There are 3 ways in which you can make a return to our church. You can mail a check to the office, go to our website, UUCGT.org, or give via phone with the Vanco app. Our offering will now be gratefully gathered.
It is our practice as a religious community to set aside time in our service to name and honor the joys and concerns that touch our lives the milestones and moments of our lived experiences. In a moment, I will offer up some of the joys and concerns that have been shared with us to share here in our service. If there are those of you here today that have a joy or a concern that's a bit too heavy or tender and fresh on your heart to share with us in our service, I invite you to reach out to myself or to someone from the congregational care team. Would somebody from congregational care either stand or raise a hand to just identify yourself? Thank you, Judith. So you can either reach out to myself or to somebody from congregational care, or you can simply just feel held in the love of this gathered community. None of us is meant to ever travel life's journey alone. And so here is what has been shared with us to hold on our hearts this morning as we gather our joys and concerns. Well, we've got a lot of birthdays, so bear with me here. We have a happy birthday to Charles Brackett and to Hal Gurian, so happy birthday to both of those. We've got a couple of candles for a special birthday as well. Marcia Bellinger's birthday of 95 years was yesterday, so that's a candle from Nancy Doty. And we have another candle from Amanda, a joy. Please join me in wishing my mother, Marcia Bellinger, a happy birthday. She turned 95 years old yesterday. She is a blessing to us all. I'm not forgetting any other birthdays in our midst, am I right? So we have another candle from Doug and Margaret Wozniak. Our thoughts are with our son and daughter-in-law who lost their 6-year-old Great Dane to cancer this week, a month after she had a front leg amputated. Their devotion to their dogs is a symbol of universal love. And so we light this candle of concern. We light another candle of concern from Jan Zerbel. Concern for two dear friends. Judy Myers is dealing with the effects of COVID after testing positive Thursday evening. And Sharon, with whom I have traveled life's passages for 60 years, facing a diagnosis of ovarian cancer. So we light this candle for Judy and Sharon. And now we light one final candle for all of the joys and concerns that remain in the silence of our hearts but are not forgotten. As we join together in this time for meditation and prayer, let us feel this stillness abiding all around us. Notice the sounds and sensations here in the room. And if you can, glance even around you, especially looking out at these beautiful windows of the outdoors all around us. And if and when it feels comfortable, close your eyes and join me in breathing deeply together as we do each week. Taking a deep breath in and out. Another deep breath in and out. How special are we that we live on this wondrous planet, this beautiful earth that we call our home, this land of great trees and flowing streams, of golden deserts and snow-capped mountains. We see nature's majesty all around us in all sorts of forms. And though in modern times we think and feel that we live fairly removed from it, we never really are that far from nature itself. In this time when we are holding those on our hearts that need our love and care, we think of those who are affected and hurting from natural disasters and unpredictable weather events. For those affected by the recent tornado and storms devastating northern Michigan and our neighbors in Gaylord. In this time, we call to our minds a sacred place where we've been, a special tree we've rested underneath for shade and refuge, a favorite lake or stream, or any other natural place where we feel our spirits called home. We celebrate the gifts of the natural world, especially in this time when our natural world and its balance are under threat, threatened by our greed and wastefulness, threatened by our perceived immortality and invincibility, by our own wish to consume and take more than we nurture and give. In this time, we also hold together the yearnings of our hearts that we've shared in our community. We hold those who are sick, who are recovering from COVID, for those who have been diagnosed with cancer, for deaths in our lives of our beloved companions and those that make our lives better, that we know our lives will never be the same without. And we also hold the joy of celebrating and marking life's big milestones and moments of great big birthdays and celebrating with those who we love. As we ponder the nature of nature's sacredness and its brilliance, may we pray that our hearts and minds be changed to both protect and preserve it for our future. Nature abides all around us. May we become stewards and caretakers of these lands that truly do not belong to us or to any person, but are nevertheless our home. May it be so, and amen. Margaret will now share with you this morning's reading.
Our reading this morning is from the book, The Sacred Depths of Nature, written by Ursula Goodenough. In this excerpt, Goodenough speaks to her perspective as a religious naturalist, someone who sees nature as naturally sacred in its own right. She says, "When people talk about religion, most soon mention the major religious traditions of our times. But then, thinking further, most mention as well the religions of indigenous peoples, and as such vanished civilizations as the ancient Greek, the Egyptian, or those in Persia. That is, we have come to understand that there are and have been many different religions. Anthropologists estimate the total in the thousands. In the end, each of these religions addresses two fundamental human concerns. One, how things are. And two, which things matter. How things are becomes formulated as a cosmology or cosmos. Which things matter becomes codified as morality or ethos. The role of religion is to integrate the cosmology and the morality, to render the cosmological narrative so rich and compelling that it elicits our allegiance and our commitment to its moral understandings. I stand in awe of these religions, she says, though my concern is very different. As I witnessed contemporary efforts to generate global understanding, I see some high-minded and idealistic people attempting to operate within an amalgam of economic, military, and political arrangements. And I find myself crying out, but wait, where is the religion? Where is the shared cosmology and the shared morality? A cosmology works as a religious cosmology only if it resonates, only if it makes the listener feel religious. To be sure, the beauty of nature, sunsets, woodlands, fireflies, has elicited religious emotions throughout the ages. We are moved to awe and wonder at the grandeur, the poetry, the richness of natural beauty. It fills us with joy and thanksgiving. A response to accounts of the workings of nature, however, is decidedly less positive. The scientific version of how things are and how they came to be is much more likely at first encounter to elicit alienation, isolation, or rejection, responses that offer little promise for motivating our allegiance or moral orientation. Being at home with our natural selves is the prelude to ecology, both environmental and cultural. And there are many ways to see human beings as noble and distinctive, even as we are inexorably part of the whole. A global ethic must be anchored both in an understanding of the human nature and an understanding of the rest of nature. This, I believe, can be achieved if we start out with the same perspective on how nature is put together and how human nature flows forth from whence we came.
So how many of you have ever seen or found yourself at the base of a giant California redwood? Anybody? Oh, fair amount of you. So redwood trees are some of the most special and sacred trees to myself. Growing up with frequent camping trips and hikes through these cathedrals of large sequoias and redwoods, I've always been fascinated with the enormity of these trees, the wise ancientness that they seem to carry with them through centuries of standing tall, their trunks reaching so high up in the air. Through generations also, as they silently bear witness through so many natural changes and transformations all around them. And as a kid, I remember particularly enjoying Big Basin State Park, the oldest state park in California, in the mountains northwest of Santa Cruz. Perhaps some of you have even been. I see some nods. You see, redwoods, or rather their fuzzy red bark, are actually fireproof. When a forest fire occurs, the wooded insides of the tree can sometimes catch fire, but leaving behind, they leave these bark shells that continue to reach high up in the air that are hollow and empty. And it's an interesting feeling standing inside one of these giant chimneys, as they're called. This feeling to me that feels almost akin to being beneath the vaulted ceilings of a large cathedral, or even staring out at the expanse of the open night sky and feeling your own smallness in the grand scheme of things. So for me, redwoods were my cathedral growing up, and inside them I could always find that sacred and special feeling of being on hallowed grounds, my feet at the roots of these giants, and this feeling of something so much larger than just myself. And so you can imagine the shock and pain that I felt a couple of years ago when I learned that 97% of Big Basin's 18,000 acres were burned in a fire. Reading a headline off of social media, I stared in disbelief as my friends shared the news and images of the 2020 CZU lightning fire that ravaged the park. I remember feeling helpless almost as I watched from Massachusetts while finishing up my time in school. Some of California's oldest redwoods had burned to the ground, and nearly all of the park's historic structures no longer stood. And a lightning storm had ignited these dry brush and other pieces, creating this mega fire due to climate change and more of these dry and arid seasons in California. To me, it felt as shocking as seeing the flames engulf Paris's Notre Dame Cathedral that happened in just the year before. And it left me wondering if Big Basin might ever actually be the same. If I'd ever be able to stand beneath those giants and feel the same sense of specialness of standing between those large trunks, breathing deeply the redwoods and their earthy and spiced scents, the incense of these forests that always seem to take my spirit deeper. For some of us in our community, the pain and trauma of these megafires out west have also destroyed our own homes and even caused us to relocate. I recognize how fortunate that I was for my friends and family back home who, as well as my wider community, who were back home safe and were not harmed in the wake of all these fires. Though it became clear that for me, in a sense, one of my homes was actually destroyed. The sacred beams of the forest that had taught me so much as a kid, my special place that had been destroyed due to global warming, and our growing inability as human beings to, quote, play God. How we fail to control how we resource and sometimes even abuse our own environment. So this Sunday, we are delving into the sacred depths of the natural world in all of its majesty and grandeur. A reverence for nature itself goes beyond just a reverence for trees, even as special and important as redwoods are. This planet itself holds such an incredible scope of climates and biomes, as well as a biodiversity of creatures within each of them that evoke those same familiar feelings of both wonder and reverence that aligns with religion. From deserts to snowy taigas, even from the depths of the oceans to the great canopies of the rainforests, the beauty and spectrum of life is almost this miracle for us to behold. And for many of us, nature itself is sacred just on its own. You don't need a creed or to hold a faith in God to find nature so special and holy. There's simply something evocative about it and all the ways that we can experience it across our lives. And this perspective of nature's sacred depths has formed a movement known as religious naturalism, as the author Ursula Goodenough describes for us in our reading. In her words, when people talk about religion, most soon mention the major religious traditions of our times. In the end, each of these religions addresses two fundamental human concerns. One, how things are, and two, which things matter. The beauty of nature, sunsets, woodlands, fireflies, has elicited religious emotions throughout the ages. We are moved to awe and wonder at the grandeur of poetry, the richness of natural beauty, and it fills us with joy and thanksgiving. In this Soul Matters month of nurturing beauty, I'm wondering what religious naturalism might offer us in nurturing and renewing our commitments to the earth and our wounded planet. How might a reverence for nature and its sacred depths shift our perspective on the present issues facing our climate and our world? What might a fresh way of seeing the natural world offer us with this new sense of sacredness? And how can we go beyond and see the science of nature in a new light? One that goes beyond feelings of alienation, of ennui and nihilism. How might we understand our roles differently with nature, instead of as consumers and takers, as givers and stewards of these natural cathedrals that we behold? So while not all hope is lost itself, global scientists agree that we are in a climate crisis in our present world. In fact, some suggest that many of the effects of climate change due to human activity and our emissions is actually irreversible. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change at the United Nations suggests that over 40% of the world's populations are highly vulnerable to these shifts and changes to our climate. Extreme weather events like floods, fires, and heat waves and storms are on the rise. affecting humans and other species much greater than events in our recent past. Rising temperatures cause droughts to forests and bleached coral reefs to disappear and dissolve. In the words of their recent study, places where people live and work may simply cease to exist. Ecosystems and species that we've all grown up with that are central to our cultures and our languages continue to inform us. Those actually may disappear. We ourselves are at a pivotal moment with our relationship to the natural world, as removed as we believe that we are from it in this world of concrete streets and steel structures, in this world of social media and increased digital interactions. While we may think that we are far from our roots with nature, the effects of this climate crisis have and will affect us all. And while we might still change some of our course, some of this damage is already done, and we can't just undo it or take it back. Now, as bleak as this image seems, I promise you that hope itself is still not lost. I believe that the answer might actually be in a shift of our thinking, in our spiritual relationships to nature and these wider ecosystems. In Unitarian Universalism, not only is the circle of life sacred to us as one of our sources, but we also affirm the interdependent web of all existence as one of our principles. We affirm that nature has something spiritual to teach us, that these teachings help to instruct us in our aspirations to live in harmony with the natural world and with nature's rhythms. While Unitarian Universalism itself is a religious tradition, it also draws from these natural religious feelings that many of us turn to with nature. We also affirm that science itself, too, can be a tool and an instrument of faith, that scientific understandings and processes themselves are holy and sacred, and how they change us and show us more about this vast universe that we all live in. Now, I want to read for you another portion of Goodenough's work describing the origins of life as a sacred process. Now, I want you to imagine that you're hearing this as a religious text or a sacred reading from another religious tradition as you hear these words. In the beginning, there was high-energy physics. But during the cooling of the universe, we encounter the origins of chemistry, the chemistry that generates the so-called building blocks of life: water, carbon dioxide, interstellar dust. Interstellar dust itself forms these huge clouds of matter between the stars, soaking up the elements released from stellar catastrophes. They heat and cool, and this energy flows and allows hundreds of different kinds of complex molecules to form on their surfaces. As comets and meteors passed through the interstellar clouds and then crashed into Earth, they brought with them these large cargoes of such building blocks. Small but complex building blocks accumulated in the waters of the new Earth from the time it formed about 4.5 billion years ago. A system got thrown together, apparently quite by chance, and yet emergence. Life from non-life, like wine from water. Now it is seen to be the near inevitable consequence of our thermal and chemical circumstances. Even life's emergence itself seems sacred, even through a lens of science. Granted, I'm sure that religious authors seldom in history used words like chemistry, molecules, and carbon dioxide in their sacred texts. This is also to say that I believe religious naturalism is onto something that we affirm as UUs, but also something that might transform how we as human beings live in relationship to the earth. The good news is that death and destruction never have the final say, even in the natural world. Do you remember how up to 97% of Big Basin was scorched by the fires in 2020? Well, since that time, life has already started to grow back. New redwood seedlings have taken root in the places where giants once stood. The creatures that lived there too have returned. In a process of centuries, like the time it took medieval builders to construct these grand stone cathedrals, the wooden cathedrals are growing back from 3 to 10 feet each year. Even the so-called chimneys themselves are alive. The bark shells that are left after the burns from the insides of the trees are hollowed and emptied, and they continue to grow defiantly against the consequences of our own actions. There is hope found in the ashes, even as hope itself seems hardest to find. If we are to truly live and thrive as human beings, we must learn to reapproach nature with this lens of sacredness. As Good Enough tells us, being at home with the natural world itself is the prelude to ecology, both environmental and cultural. A global ethic must be anchored both in an understanding of human nature and also an understanding of the rest of nature. This, I believe, can be achieved if we start out with the same perspective of how nature is put together and how nature flows forth from whence it came. Imagine how different our world would be if we all started from that same reverential place, if we all saw the source of all life reflected in the ecosystems that we so eagerly draw from. Imagine how Earth's beauty could truly change us if we too are brave enough to preserve it. In our Time for All Ages story this morning, we see how growth and progress is still possible even after destruction. We see how even with the forest felled, Zonia is compelled to answer nature's call for help. Zonia's story tells us that not just the forests need us, but the whole earth needs us now. And that we ourselves must answer its call if we are to make it, if we are to recover some of the sacredness and beauty that we've lost. So, dear ones, I end on this hopeful note. As bleak as it seems, may we all be moved by nature's sacredness to preserve it and keep it, to take a stand against those who would desecrate and destroy it. May we find within ourselves that familiar feeling of awe and wonder that has transcended the ages. The awe found beneath giant redwoods and nature's other grand cathedrals. The awe and wonder that has compelled humans to see their place in the great web of life and all existence. And when these weather events and natural disasters ravage our world, may we remember that a balance with nature starts first with ourselves. May we know that nature's resilience will remain, that a brighter future is possible should we truly learn the lessons found in nature's sacred scriptures, the lands and life forms speaking to our hearts and our own innate reverence. Let nature's sacred depths create within us new depths of stewardship and relationship. And may we be transformed for the better, knowing that our lives and futures depend on it. May we become the better people that we know that we can be. May it be so, and amen. I now invite you to rise in body or in spirit and to join in singing our closing hymn found in your gray hymnals, number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. Marianne Rivers will lead us in singing together.
This is not a solo.
For the beauty of
The earth, for the splendor of the skies, for their love which from our birth over and around us lies, source of all to thee.
Before we extinguish the chalice, embrace these words by Linda Barr. Credit whomever you please, the glory is there. Credit whomever you please, she brings the snow. Credit whomever you please, her beauty she shares. Credit whomever you please, from which new life grows. Credit whomever you please, religious or no. Credit whomever you please, one cannot deny that this beauty is sent from above by an awesome spirit. Credit whomever you please, name is insignificant in the larger scheme of things. Credit whomever you please, the Creator lives. May you carry whomever you please with you as your guide in the coming week.
In the spirit of covenant, community, and commitment, in the spirit of nature's sacredness in its own right, may we be made ready to serve one another and to build the world that we so desperately dream of. Go in peace, all of you. Happy Sunday. May it be so, and amen. This is the time at the end of our service where we invite those of you here to join in the social hall for a time of conversation and fellowship. Those of you online, we invite you to return to to actually head to the virtual social hall on Zoom so that you can also join in talking with others in our community. And just to note that those of our candidates that were introduced today are available after the service should you like to go and ask them any questions. Thank you for being here with us today. Go in peace and grow in love.